Welcome to Talks from the Essex Hotel with your hosts, Sarita Patel and Latham Woodward. The views expressed on this show are those of our guests and are not necessarily in line with our opinions, but can be. Please enjoy this program and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Welcome back to Talks from the Essex Hotel. I'm Latham Woodward, your host, and my co-host, Sarita Patel. As always, say hello, Sarita.
Good morning, Latham. How are you?
Good morning. And since our last episode, Marvin has returned without a bride. Marvin, our intrepid doorman who'd gone to Venezuela for a vacation. And he did say he had a good time, and he said it wasn't as shitty as he thought it was. That was his quote. That was his assessment of his trip.
Oh, good.
Yes. I'm sure that he met some ladies down there. Everyone seems to love Marvin, 6'6" of all man. And Enrique, thank you for your help while he was gone. You remain an NPC, but we love you. So this week we're going to talk to Sarita about her next career step, and that was at Spiegel Catalogs. And the reason we're doing this series is because Sarita has really been all of these different places when the culture was great and then it deteriorated during her tenure. And that's when she left and would move on to a next position. So, Sarita, tell us about, in general, what Spiegel was. Because it was a big thing in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, so Spiegel is a catalog, and they had a big catalog. It was called the Big Book. And it had housewares and fashion. And, it was founded in 1865 by Joseph Spiegel in Chicago. So it originally sold goods through the mail to rural Americans who had limited access to stores. That's how it began. So it was along the lines of Sears, Montgomery Ward's, and JCPenney. But it was the largest mail-order business in the United States.
Yeah, and it was old. It was founded in 1865. So it wasn't a young business just starting out. I mean, it almost goes back as far as Levi Strauss, which isn't crazy.
Right. And it, it was originally a German company. So it was a German company that company then got replicated over here in the 1800s.
So they lasted more than 100 years, and they finally gave up the ghost in 2019. Mm-hmm. I think that's it, though. I don't think there's a Spiegel organization any longer, right?
I don't either, because, if you think about it, so I was in inventory control, and I started there in 1987. But basically, Spiegel was doing in the 80s what Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Instagram would do decades later.
That's
they
right.
Were collecting data.
And am I correct? It was not like S&W blue stamps or green stamps that we talked about before, because the stuff at Spiegel was actually kind of higher end. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I would say that it was high end, so it wasn't for middle class people. I mean, you had to be able to afford it. Right? And when I say afford it, I just say it wasn't JCPenney prices, it wasn't Montgomery Ward's or Sears. It was a little bit higher. So I think what they were doing was, I know because I was sitting in those meetings, they were really getting the consumer ready for a higher quality that wasn't luxury, but you appeared to be luxury.
It was just really, they would call it quiet luxury now. That's the term the kids use.
Right. So with the mail order catalog, you get a lot of things because they can, just like, again, how we know the data companies can track all of our purchases, right? But back then, they were keeping track of who bought, what they bought, when they bought it, how often they bought it, how much they spent, and what styles they preferred.
And they would track spend?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So, again, when you have a mail order catalog, I don't think a lot of people at Spiegel were really thinking that way. I was, because I was in inventory meetings and marketing meetings. So I would just listen. I was a kid. But when you hear somebody talk about data, and then you've got everyone else kind of excited because it's a fashion company, I was like, what are they really doing here? And so, and I think we really saw the same thing when people started signing up for Google and social media. They were just kind of giving their information away because it was being requested, or you had to fill something in to get access. And so it's the exact same thing.
So they also distributed pretty well-known brands. I mean, they did Newport News, Shape FX, Old Craftsman, Eddie Bauer as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's unusual. I didn't expect to hear that. And it was, I know that Spiegel catalogs were on my grandparents', coffee table or my grandmother's desk. Mm-hmm. My mom always got one too. I think she ordered a lot of stuff from there. Mm-hmm. But back in the day when, it's strange to say this now, right? But when I was a kid, my mother sewed clothing for us. It was kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of moms did that.
Right.
They weren't great, I have to say. She was perfecting her skill. But she did it, And I have shout out to my mother. She just had her birthday, and she did sew a shirt back together for me the other day.
Oh, that's so
those
great.
skills paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, the thing about Spiegel is they could also tell what neighborhoods bought luxury goods, which
Right.
customers responded to discounts, which customers bought children's clothing, which customers were likely to buy furniture next. So they were literally tracking behavior.
Would they market based on their tracking?
Absolutely.
So,
And then they would do tests, right? So, but they also had a lot of data from other things, like Sears and Montgomery Ward's and JCPenney. These data centers all do share information, whether people think they don't or they do. They do. I mean,
you can buy it.
Yeah, executives move from Spiegel to the Gap, and you think they're not sharing their insider tips and tricks. So, but this is really about consumer analytics, behavioral targeting, predictive marketing. And back then it was just called direct marketing. So they changed the name.
It was all, well, obviously,
it was all direct
from
marketing.
1865 onward. I was reading here in Wikipedia that they had their factory burned down in, I think it was the 1880s, and they just, in the one of the great Chicago fires, and he and his partner just built it right back in a couple years, and we're back in business. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I always thought, and this is just my interpretation, I didn't know they were from Chicago. And I thought Joseph Spiegel, was like a schmata, a garment guy from New York. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't. Mm-mm. I mean, he went straight to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And that's funny. And he was he's the younger brother of Union Army Colonel Marcus M. Spiegel, which is interesting.
We might have to do some research on him later.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy. That's the wonderful thing right now is we can go down these rabbit holes and really find the connecting points to, a lot of this is rinse, repeat, recycle. So the thing about what was happening in the United States at that time is the 80s was a turning point. It went from mass marketing to personalized marketing. So like Spiegel, different people were getting different ads based on what they were collecting.
Their spend patterns and everything else. So they were using modern kind of analytics.
Yeah.
And they're the birthplace of it, really.
Spiegel was among the pioneers.
Yeah.
So again, here I end up in this place, right? And I didn't know at the time that they were pioneering this until I really looked back and started to go, that's...
Now, the department you actually worked in, what was it called?
Inventory control. I was an inventory control specialist.
So we've had subsequent conversations on how that skill set has really benefited you in terms of what you went on to do at Lucas.
Well, yeah. So I was offered a job in marketing. That was kind of the cool job. But when I was interviewing there, I saw the inventory department and I thought, well, if I'm going to be the president of this company one day, I better know about inventory because that can make or break a company. So I asked for that job. It was a lesser paying job. It was a much less glamorous job. It was number crunching. But I got to interface with marketing and with buying. So it kind of gave me more access. So inventory and how things are managed, calculated, organized, how the information is read became incredibly important because I had a lot of reports.
Right.
And so, like, even if you take it to Lucas, one of my big jobs there was managing the art collection, the book collection, the toy collection, where's this, where's that. And so I created databases there before we had the internet. And I became like a database kind of guru. I was obsessive about it. But that's what helped me find things. And like I remember Christie's auction house looking at my database in the early 90s, and they asked me who did it. And I said, well, I did. And they're like, well, no, but what engineer made this? And I said, well, I worked with people who helped me tweak the fields and get it in a way that worked for me. And they loved it so much, they asked if they could use it. Right? So that inventory, that just that work, when you're really applying it, and it's not just a task, you start fudging with it.
Right. So at the outset, they were just making clothes. Then they merged into this much bigger thing. It's apparently they had a hard time during the Depression, like every company in the world, right? But what was the big? I mean, one of the big takeaways for me was when you told me that you actually started doing sidewalk or parking lot sales with extra inventory that they had produced, and was. It's pretty fascinating because that was something that later went on when you were at Gap and Esprit. They used to do that same thing.
Well, right. So I remember we were sitting in a meeting and there was one big order for a garment that was supposed to be like the blowout seller, and it was on the cover of the catalog and everything.
The hot thing for the season.
Right, because usually what's on the cover gets the most orders. Well, that didn't go so well. So we ended up with a lot of excessive.
Why was that? Was it weather related, or like it wasn't appropriate for the weather that year or something? Or
no, I think it had a lot to do with, as we talk about ideology and political movements, or maybe wanting an icon to be like the next model for people. I think they got it wrong. I think they may have been too early in pressing a look.
Oh, really?
I think.
It wasn't culotte pants, was it?
Well, it's like, how, like today, right? If you put Kim Kardashian on the cover, then all these teeny boppers go and buy whatever Kim's wearing, right? It's a kind of a guaranteed thing, or was.
Not Kim so much anymore.
Right, not anymore. So if we take that same kind of concept, if Gwyneth Paltrow sells something in the past, the sales would kind of jump. I think things are changing right now.
Yeah, seeing what's happened with her Israeli condo deal.
Oh, yes.
Oof.
So I think the same thing was happening at Spiegel. They had the covers right, and then when they were kind of pushing the limit, and they missed the mark. So that ended up with an incredible amount of excess inventory, and it was costing a lot of money. So I remember we were saying, like, well, let's open up a pop-up shop and just sell each of these for $5. Let's see what happens. And so that pop-up shop, I think everything was cleared out in a weekend. And so they started to open up outlet stores so that all of our excess inventory would automatically go to the outlet store.
Real outlet stores, not the fake ones that we have everywhere now. They're ridiculous. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're going to an outlet store, you're just buying stuff made for the outlet store. That's the reality of that one. Sometimes you'll score something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But was this for the original sidewalk sale? Was that a Spiegel branded product, or is it just something they over ordered from one of their retail partners?
They over ordered a Spiegel branded product.
So that's a really at least you got margin in that one though.
Yeah,
you've got great margin.
Yeah,
not like if you ordered something made from somebody else. And you've got a very slim margin on that.
Well, then you can also do a return order, but when something is private labeled, you own it.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that was the advent of that. What other things at Spiegel do you think you took forward in terms of their management system? Now, you told me that you were expected to dress like a Spiegel person, and that basically bankrupted your meager salary.
Yeah, you had to dress like you were a fashion person. and from everything. But my counterpartner, I think the guy who sat next to me, he was a guy, he could wear a suit. So he had 2 suits. He only had to buy 2 outfits.
Right.
All of us girls, there was like this internal competition to see, it went as far as like, who's prettier than who. Like that was an underlying message, even though people didn't say it. So like for me,
For sure.
I just didn't look good in those corporate clothes. I tried my best, and I have pictures of me wearing these fancy clothes and stuff. But I'm a little bit of a tomboy person, so to be wearing these fitted jackets and sitting down trying to use my brain and be smart, it was a little constricting.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. But I fell into it because I wasn't thinking for myself, thinking, well, I can just wear whatever I want. No, I was pressured into that. Nobody sat there. It was a self-inflicted pressure because I wanted to fit in. But, I didn't stay there very long. I went to California because I did go broke buying clothes. And then I went to the Gap, which, we'll talk about that. But that was almost the opposite. So that went from, a little bit of, you could pick what you wanted to wear at Spiegel and have your own style. But at the Gap, it was a uniform.
Right. You just had to have what was it? Was it blue jeans and a white tee or something like that?
Yeah, it was either khaki pants and a white shirt or jeans and a white shirt.
Yeah, that was the look for so long.
And you had to tuck your shirt into your pants. And let me tell you, you know me for almost 3 years now. I don't tuck my shirts into my pants.
Yeah.
It
was an interesting time.
But, it all goes to, like, what I was thinking is, if I can't think and if I can't feel, then creative ideas aren't going to emerge from me. So clothing actually was really important to me because I could see how it did affect the way I thought.
Yeah. And then what was the breaking point for you at Spiegel? Why did you decide it wasn't time there? Was it the money?
It was, am I just going to grind away here, being a little data slave? And, I'll climb up the corporate ladder, but where am I going to go? I don't want any of those jobs that any of those people at that level have. It looked just absolutely unattractive to me.
Right.
I didn't want to be that. So I always look at, do I want to be like the person up at the top or at the next level? And when I mean that, like, is it inspiring to me? Is that kind of the work that I want to do? And the answer was absolutely not.
So when you left, did they try to retain you?
Yes.
And you just said, no, I'm out of here.
I said I already have another job.
Was that true?
I already had a job at the Gap.
So, oh, wow.
Yeah, they moved me out to California.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
They didn't last much longer. I mean, they had a good, I think 15, 20-year run after that.
Well, the great thing about being at the Gap at that point was there weren't very many inventory control specialists. Mm-hmm. It was an absolute new emerging field. So I was at the ground level of that. So, the position I had at the Gap was a high position because there just weren't many of us, especially women, who were interested in it. So coming to San Francisco and being at the Gap at that time where that was, they were setting the trend was incredibly informative. But, the Gulf War had just been announced. And I remember sitting in a meeting and we were talking about the colors of a T-shirt, mustard and cranberry and lavender. And people were having, stress attacks about inventory and how they missed it or how they got it. And I was like, really? This is what we talk about all day long? How many mustard T-shirts we're going to sell?
Right.
And so, again, it was a point in my life where I was at an emerging field. I could have done very, very well there, but I kind of saw enough. Going from Spiegel to the Gap, I saw enough. I was only at the Gap for about 9 months, and I left. And it was the first time I quit a job without another job.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Adrift in San Francisco.
Yeah, but it let me actually see San Francisco. I worked at a radio station. I worked at Chevron. And then I was looking for a full-time job. So those three things are, full-time jobs.
What radio station do you work at?
Live 105.
Live 105.
Uh-huh. I was answering phones.
As a receptionist for a program or?
Live 105, can you hold please? Live 105, can you hold please? Live 105, can you hold please?
You got the chops. Of course you got that job.
But it was nerve-wracking because I didn't want to mess up.
Right.
And if you hang up on somebody, they get really irate because that person who's calling in to be on the radio station wants to get through.
Right. Okay, so you were the girl who was the gatekeeper to the next guy who came on to find out. What are you calling about? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll get him on. Yeah, Alex Bennett will listen to you now. Lori Thompson and Alex Bennett, the two DJs.
Right. So it was about sequencing, right? And personalities.
I've talked to you then. Because
you probably did.
I did call into that show a lot.
Well, it's probably why I ended up being friends with Human Khalili.
Oh, yeah, that's it, huh?
Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah.
So getting back to Spiegel, I mean, that was just the arc was just over. You moved on.
It was such a great place to be when I was there.
Yeah, despite
honestly.
the bad salary and the keeping up with the Joneses and in terms of dressing.
I mean, those are things I think people do, get involved with. I mean, I had friends who stayed at Spiegel for 20 years after I left there, and that was good for them. It would not have been good for me because I would have sacrificed a little bit of my sole desire to stay there just for a steady increasing paycheck. And so, I've said this, money's important to me, but more the adventure of like finding out what I'm really good at and what my gifts are have always been a major motivator for me.
So what was the big takeaway that you think you're valuing most now from that experience? The inventory control and knowing about systems?
The fact that they were data mining us back then. So mining humans for data to figure out their predictive programming, behavioral patterns, that was going on back then. So if it was going on back then, it had to have been starting earlier. So what I really took was I learned how to manage the inventory, and then what do you do with that data? And that's still the question that we're asking today. Are they using that data to help us or hinder us, humans?
Big question. Big question.
Yeah, because it is a mathematical formula. So, if profit is the major motivation or, something else that I can think of, then you're going to skew towards that, right? Regardless of what is going to happen to the human. So I think with all of these places, I hold what's going to happen to humans very close to my heart. That doesn't mean that I think there's a lot of lazy human beings out there. I think there are a lot of awful human beings out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I am looking at the general treatment of humanity. And that, I think, is of utmost importance right now. And I got a really good understanding of that at Spiegel.
If anyone's listening that worked at Spiegel, had interaction with Spiegel, or had a story about Spiegel, I'd love for you to, comment and supply us with that information, because I think it's one of those iconic businesses that just doesn't exist anymore. That was very much a big player in the popular zeitgeist and the way we did business. And so I think we'll leave it there.
Oh, can I say one more thing? Okay.
Yeah.
So, back then you were allowed to smoke in the office.
Oh, yeah.
And they just changed the rules at Spiegel where you could not smoke at your desk, but you could go into every other floor bathroom and smoke in the smoking lounge part of a bathroom. So one tip I learned at Spiegel is I started smoking at Spiegel, and I started to listen. All the secretaries would smoke. They'd take their break and go have their cigarette break. And I would go in there, and I would hear all of the corporate gossip about who was going to get fired, who was going to get promoted, because all the secretaries knew way before it was announced.
Right.
So I used to just go in there and listen. And so I kind of knew things were changing. And so that was also an impetus for me to be like, yeah, don't get too comfortable here because things are going to change. And so it was really easy for me to just take that leap and go to California.
Your dad wasn't happy, right?
Oh, my dad was just like, what is she doing?
Really?
Why can't she just stay near home? Like, why does she have to keep going places? And, I ended up moving to San Francisco 2 weeks after the earthquake, and I didn't know there was an earthquake here.
Now, we did skip something, but we're going to bounce backward in time in the next episode, and that is more stories about you working with Andy Warhol at the factory. Mm-hmm. So we're going to leave it here today for this one. It's a short one, and we're going to get into a little episode with the working at the factory, the Gap in more full picture, and then Esprit, and that will be our episode to come. And anything else on this subject, Sarita?
No, I think it's really important for people, when they stop and go, what is Amazon doing? What are all these people doing? Well, this has been going on from the beginning of time.
Just a different form.
It's just a different color of lipstick, brand of lipstick.
Right.
That's it. So, people, we need to really stop and stop complaining and start creating the life that you want.
Exactly. Good words to end on. And until next time, we will see you back here at Talks from the Essex Hotel, continuing the journey to hear, about the way things were in corporate America as told by a frontline survivor. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, this is Latham Woodward and co-host Sarita Patel, whose story we are telling in these episodes. Thanks, Sarita.
Thanks, Latham. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Talks from the Essex Hotel. We strive to bring you interesting and different guests every week. Please like and subscribe to hear more content from Talks from the Essex Hotel. Until next time, see you then.